Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Let's get started.
Yeah. Sahana vavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryankaravavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gita Dhyanam. Om Partha Pratipita Bhagavata Narayanina Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Puranam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritadarshiniം Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amba Tvamanusandadami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Nitra Yena Tvaya Bharata Tailya Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetrika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhi Namaha Sarvopanishadu Gavu Dugdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadrona Tata Jayadratha Jala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhanavartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharvyavachah sarojamamalam Geetarthagantootkatam Nanakhyanakakesaram Harikata Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke sajjana shattarairaharaha Pipiyamanam muda Bhuyad bharata pankajam Kalimala pradvamsina shreyase Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayati girim yat kripatamaham vande paramananda madhavam yam brahma varunindra rudra marutaha stunvanti divyaistavaihi vedai sanga padakramupanishadir gayanti yam samaga Dhyanavastitadadhatina manasa Pashyanti yam yogino Yasyantam na vidusura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha.
Hari Om. So Bhagavan had listed 26 virtues that are critical for sadhakas, that are born with and born for Daivi Sampat, and critical for them to follow, these sadhakas to follow. And the Siddha exhibits these values fully and completely and serves as a living role model to learn from, get inspired by, and follow for the sadhakas. Siddhasya Lakshanani, Sadhakasya Sadhanani. He then summarizes the Asuri Sampat in 3 sets that influence each other. The hypocrisy, arrogance, and self-conceit as the first set, anger and harshness as the second one, and ignorance as the third one. And presenting the result of Daivi and Asuri Sampat respectively, Bhagavan says, Daivi Sampat Vimokshaya. One with Daivi Sampat is fully liberated. Vimokshaya means completely. Both Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Completely liberated, fully liberated. And he says, Nibandhayasuri Mata. One with the Asuri Sampat, the decadent one, is deemed for bondage. Bondage to what? Bondage to this samsara, the repeated cycle of birth and death. And even within the repeated cycle of birth and death, the papa and the punya, which is nothing but the disturbances and the elation of the mind and intellect. That is what it is. So bound to all these aspects. And he said that, or fundamentally what we learned was that taking recourse to the goodness within us and overcoming the bad within us. The goodness and the bad are both within us. Taking recourse to the goodness and overcoming the bad, that means that we are born for Daivi Sampat. And taking recourse to the bad within us and subjugating the good within us means that one is born for Asuri Sampat. And Bhagavan said, Ma Shuchas Sampadam Daivim Abhijatosi Pandava. Don't be anxious, O Pandava. You are born and your inclination is towards the Daivi Sampat. Your goals are pointing towards Daivi Sampat. So in this manner, Bhagavan assured Arjuna, and what an assurance for any sadhaka to achieve or receive rather. And by this stage, we have seen that Arjuna is actually transformed into a very high level of sadhaka, maybe even very close to a siddha. Bhagavan himself earlier addresses him as a one who is accomplished, right? So he probably at this stage of the Bhagavad Gita in the battleground, as Krishna is speaking to Sri Krishna is speaking to him, Arjuna is probably already a siddha. But even for that siddha, what an assurance for Bhagavan. And for sadhakas like us, who are studying the scriptures, studying Bhagavad Gita, listening to Sri Krishna, obviously, it implies that we are born with and born for Daivi Sampat. So a great assurance for all of us. And then Bhagavan takes it upon himself to point out the decadent aspects of his own prakriti, his own creation. And that is the beauty of, Sri Krishna, how he is able to present so that people learn from his presentation and know what to do and what not to do. We will see a little more when we see the Asuri Sampat. And he says, Asuram Partha me shrinu. Listen from me, O Partha, the Asuram. And as we have seen, Bhagavan has actually given us that assurance. But normally what happens when you go through the Asuri Sampat is a little bit unsettling, maybe even more unsettling, maybe quite disturbing sometimes, right? And that's why we need to look at all of it together, like Daivi Sampat as one which we tend towards, and the Asuri Sampat as one that we shy away from, because all of that is within us. So Bhagavan continues describing the Asuri Sampat in more detail. We'll go through them verse by verse.
Pravritim cha nivrittim cha.
Pravritim cha nivrittim cha.
Janana vidurasuraha.
Janana vidurasuraha.
Na shaucham napi chacharaha.
Na shaucham napi chacharaha. Na satyam
न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते
na satyam teshu vidyate.
प्रवृत्तिं च निर्वृत्तिं च जना न विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारः न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते.
So Asuraha, Bhagavan is now going to describe the Asuri kind of people or the Asuri Sampat. Asuraha, the decadent, the demoniacal, those kind of people. Jana, people. Viduhu, no, na, not. They do not know. What do they not know? Pravrittim cha, nivrittim cha. Pravrittim, action that are to be done. And cha, nivrittim, actions that are not to be done. Not only that, cha and na shaucham, not purity. Na, not acharaha, right conduct. And napi, not even. Satyam, truth. Vidyate is found, teshu, in them. So the decadent people know not actions that ought to be done and actions that are to be refrained from. Neither purity nor right conduct, not even truth is found in them. See, commendable actions are dharmic actions. We have studied in extensive detail what dharma is and what dharmic actions are. So these are commendable actions. And prohibited actions also we have studied are adharmic. The decadent people, we have studied both of them. The problem here is that the decadent people do not know what is what. They cannot discriminate. They cannot distinguish. And they are inclined to perform adharmic actions, justifying them as dharmic actions. They find some excuse or the other, some justification or the other, some reason or the other to justify their actions as dharmic, while it may be pretty obvious that it is not. See, even in instinctively, even animals, they understand, they know what is to be done and what is not to be done. You know, if you watch the animal world, you will see very clearly. Instinctively, it comes to them, kind of what is right and what is wrong. They shy away from what is wrong. But these kind of qualities, people with these qualities, the Asuri Sampad people, for them, the thoughts itself are impure. They are sprouting with impure thoughts. And because of that, they can't even, while an animal is able to distinguish, these people are not even able to distinguish between what is dharmic and what is adharmic. As a result, because of this, because they are not able to distinguish, their physical habits are unclean, their utterances are distorted, and they are diabolical. They do not speak the truth, asatyam. There is no purity of thought or appearance, and their conduct is not right. And there is no truth at all in their speech. And Bhagavan continues in the next verse.
Asatyam pratishtam te
Asatyam pritashtam te
Jagadahuranishwaram
Jagadahuranishwaram
Aparaspara
Aparaspara
Kimanyat kamahaitukam
Kimanyat kamahaitukam
Asatyam apratishtam te Jagadahuranishwaram Aparaspara sambhutam Kimanyat kamahaitukam.
They, ahuhu, they say. Ahuhu means say. Jagad, this universe. Anishwaram is without a god. Asatyam, there is no spiritual validity in the universe. Apratishtam, it is without any basis. Apaspara sambhutam, it is brought, the universe is brought about by mutual union. Kim anyat, what else? Kama haitukam, with lust for its cause. They say that the universe is without a god, there is no spiritual validity, and it is without basis, brought about by what else but mutual union with lust for a cause. Anishwaram. Ishvara is the ultimate truth, the underlying truth. However, materialists and even some scientists, by the way, do not believe in the truth, which is upholding the universe. Now, we don't have to kind of dwell too much, and it's almost like a waste of time for us if we get deep into the extremist materialistic viewpoints, right? The people who have extreme materialistic viewpoints. We all know it is too obvious. So there's not much point in, debating and getting into them and explaining them and talking about them. It is really a waste of our time. What I will do is, to explain this point, I will give quotations from two scientists. See, a lot of these scientists are, quote unquote, atheists. So we'll just talk about two of them, two of the ones that I have spoken about earlier also. Stephen Hawking said, and I quote, "The universe itself is, in all of its mind-boggling vastness and complexity, could simply have popped into existence through the Big Bang. Do we need God to make the Big Bang bang?" So this is Hawking asking this question. Do we need God to make the Big Bang bang? And he says no. He answers in sense, no. Science has a more compelling explanation than a divine creator. Since time itself began at the time of the Big Bang, it could not have been caused by anyone or anything. So there is no question of a creator. He talks about the cause and effect theory from a scientific point of view. By the way, Bhagavan Sri Krishna talks about the same cause and effect theory from a practical and a spiritual point of view. But continuing the quotation, he says, Stephen Hawking, "We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe. And for that, I'm extremely grateful," unquote. So he's clearly an atheist. It's well known that Stephen Hawking is an atheist. But even he, being an atheist, a scientist, he's not an extreme materialist. He says he's extremely grateful to the universe. Well, Hawking could have called this universe God, to which he's extremely grateful, but he chooses not to. Now, Elon Musk, he though seems to be more of an agnostic than an atheist. He says, and I quote, "There are certainly things that we don't understand about the universe. But I don't believe that there is some super consciousness out there which is watching every move of ours and kind of evaluating our moves against some criteria that it has set, that super consciousness has set, and deciding based on that where we go and what we do after we die." And then he continues, "It does beg the question, though, as to where the super consciousness comes from. And the most likely explanation is that complexity evolved from simplicity, and simple elements combined to become complex to arrive at where we are," unquote. So seems like Musk is more aligned to Sri Krishna's philosophy. A lot of this, what he says, we have studied in great detail in the Bhagavad Gita. Continuing, Bhagavan says, "Asatyam." While the extreme materialists don't give a damn, they don't care, scientists accept the fact that there is change, constant change. In fact, I keep remembering this when talking about one of my bosses, ex-bosses used to say long back that change is not the only constant. What we often hear is change is the only constant. He would say change is not the only constant. The constantly changing pace of change is the only constant. So he just introduced one more variable of change there, And scientists, they kind of accept this flow of change as a phenomenon, which is relative in nature. But some of them do not accept the changeless substratum that is the foundation on which all this change happens. So while they accept that it is a relative phenomenon, they don't grant it that this changeless substratum is that super consciousness, is the supreme, is Bhagavan, is God. The eternal and unchanging reality behind every changing flux that we see in this universe is called the truth, Satyam. And skeptics consider this invalid. Hence they say Asatyam. The universe is Asatyam. By the way, spiritually also we know that the universe is temporary. All of Maya is in that level Asatyam. But it's not asatyam in the sense that there is no truth. There is that underlying reality, unchanging reality, the akshaya. On top of that, all the kshaya or the movement, constant samsaric movement. It keeps, samsara itself means continuous movement. All that takes place on that unchanging reality, on the akshaya. And that akshaya is the ultimate truth. And the unchanging reality is perishable. That is what we believe in. But the materialists and some of the scientists, they say even that is invalid. Apratishtam. And thus they believe that there is no basis for creation of the universe. Like Hawking himself said, right? It could have just come from that Big Bang, in a moment. It could have. Please note his words. Huh? He doesn't know whether it has or it has not. It could have. So even when you go take deep into science, even science really doesn't know. Even the age of the universe we have seen earlier, the postulations are extremes, so many millions and billions of years, in terms of the age of the universe. Anyway, let's not go into all that. As per science, it is vast and complex universe. But when we use spirituality, we say vast and subtle God. Aparaspara sambhutam kama haitukam. They believe, as Hawking puts it, that the entire universe of beings and things is formed only as a result of mutual union with lust for its cause. Apara, para, aparaspara. Apara is others, para is me. And with lust for a cause, this apara and para coming together is the reason for the universe to be existing. The sambhutam is the cause for the universe to get together. And how do such people live, and what is the result of such thought? That Bhagavan tackles in the next verse.
Etam drishtimavashtabhya
Etam drishtimavashtabhya
nashtatmanolpabuddhayaha
nashtatmanolpabuddhayaha
prabhavantyugrakarmanaha
prabhavantyugrakarmanaha
shayaya jagato hitaha
shayaya jagato hitaha.
Etam drishtimavashtabhya nashtatmanolpabuddhayaha prabhavantyugrakarmanaha shayaya jagato hitaha.
Avashtabhya, holding. Etam, this, drishtim, view. Nashtat manaha, the ruined souls. Nashta atmanaha, the ruined souls. Alpa buddhayaha, of small intellect. Ugra karmanaha, performing destructive actions. Ugra, destructive, karmanaha, actions. Prabhavanti, they emerge as hitaha, ahitaha. Ahitaha, hitaha means for. Ahita means against, enemy. They emerge as enemies, jagataha, of this universe. Shayaya, for the destruction of the universe. So Bhagavan says, holding this view, the ruined souls of small intellect, destructive actions, emerge as the enemies of the universe for its destruction. Do we need any proof for this? How the materialistic view has single-handedly caused progressive destruction of the world. Is there any proof needed? And how, not only that, how science has played a superlative supporting role. See, there are a lot of positives about science. I am a lover of science. But this deterioration or this progressive destruction that we see all around us in our planet, in the environment, in nature, science has played a very supportive, kind of a supporting actor, in the movies, that kind of a role. The planet itself is falling apart, and we see it all around us. The last 2 years was, or 2.5 years, and now it's like beginning to come up again, right? This coronavirus thing. It's a classic example of this destruction. And not only that, right now, like we saw in the last satsang, how serious efforts are on to make other planets inhabitable, other celestial bodies inhabitable. Human beings are constantly in the search to see how, when planet get, not if, when planet Earth gets destroyed, before that, can I establish my home somewhere else? So there is a race going on, okay? There also there is a race, like a corporate race, rat race that we talk about. Here also there is a race. So will planet Earth get destroyed faster, or will I be able to establish a livelihood in Mars or somewhere else faster? And how does the human being do that? Like we saw Elon Musk's idea of, nuclear explosions, destructing the nature, the natural environment of that planet. So thus, because of this, Bhagavan describes these people as Nashtat Manaha, ruined souls, Alpa Buddhayaha, of small intellect, Jagato Hitaha, enemies of this universe, Shayaya, destruction, for working for the destruction of this universe, Ugra Karmanaha, through destructive actions. Nuclear explosion is a destructive action. Bombing Ukraine is a destructive action. So all of these, that is what the world is. As against how Bhagavan described the, what was that? Yajna spirit, right? The spirit of constructive endeavor, working together, spirit of sacrifice, making sure that other beings prosper and then thinking about oneself. Like, one of my favorites, Stephen Covey says, in terms of communication, seek to understand and then be understood. Similarly, Bhagavan says, Yajna spirit, make sure that other beings are existing in a healthy, prosperous, thriving manner. And after that, you look for your own needs. Whereas what has humanity done, especially in the last 100 to 150 years? Extremely selfish motives about how our short-term gains can be met. And when that is destroying the planet, how we can create another planet for our inhabitation somewhere else. Further, Bhagavan continuing, he says, we'll do the next two verses together, verses 10 and 11.
Kamashritya dushpuram.
Kamashritya dushpuram.
Dambamana madanvitaha.
Dambamana madanvitaha.
Mohat grihitva sadgrahan.
Mohat grihitva sadgrahan.
Pravartante shuchivrataha.
Pravartante shuchivrataha.
Chintam aparimeyam cha.
Chintam aparimeyam cha.
Pralayantam upashritaha.
Pralayantam upashritaha.
Kamopabhoga aparamaha.
Kamopabhoga parama.
Etavadati nishchitaha.
Etavaditi nishchitaha.
Kamamasritya dushpuram. Dambamana madanvitaha. Mohat grihitva sadgrahan. Pravartante shuchivrataha. Chintam aparimeyam cha. Pralayantam upashritaha. Kamopabhoga paramaha. Etavadati nishchitaha.
Ashritya, filled with, dushpuram, insatiable, something that cannot be fulfilled, kamam, desires, dambhamana madanvitaha, full of hypocrisy, pride and arrogance, grihitva, holding, asadgrahan, evil ideas, asadgrahan, evil ideas, mohad, through delusion, pravartante, they work, ashuchivrataha, with impure resolves, and cha, upashritaha, taking refuge in, aparimeyan, limitless, chintam, anxiety, pralayantam, that end only at death, kamopabhoga, enjoyment of objects of desire, Bhoga, enjoyment. Kama, objects of desire. Parama, as the only goal. Having that as the only goal. Nishchitaha, being sure. Iti, that. Etavat, that is all that matters. So Bhagavan says, filled with insatiable desires, full of hypocrisy, pride and arrogance, holding evil ideas through delusion. They work with impure resolves and taking refuge in limitless anxiety that end only at death. Enjoyment of objects of desires as the only goal, being sure that that is all that matters. That is how they lead their lives. Kaman ashritya means filled with desires for selfish gain and satiation. And human action, when it is motivated by desires, all human actions are motivated by desires. But then fulfillment of one desire leads to birth of another desire. And it's an unending process. And essentially in the materialistic world, it can lead to insatiable desires. On and on and on and on, something there is no satiation. And that is what Bhagavan refers to as dushpuram. And what gives them the confidence that even these insatiable desires, they will ultimately achieve, they will definitely achieve them all. Dambha mana madanvitaha. Because this confidence comes from the hypocrisy, the arrogance, pride and self-glorification. The planet may be deteriorating, there may be landslides, the earth may be falling apart. Corona may have put everything to a standstill for 2 years, but there is hypocrisy. The minute there's the what is that called? That band, you know, what is it called? The where you shut down everything, whatever it's called. Right? We went through it for 2.5 years, whatever it's called. The minute it's lifted, people are back again. There is no care, there is no concern, there is no worry, or there is a seemingly lack of worry because the same people were like shivering when Corona was at its peak. So this hypocrisy, this double standards is there. It's there all around us. The arrogance of thinking that I am bigger than the universe. That pride of self-achievement, self-glorification, humanity, you know, humans being are the best. We can conquer planets. What is this earth? Nothing. All that. These aspects are rajas in full control. You know, these are all that when we read about rajasic nature, right? This is all rajas. And then when tamas rules, moha, Bhagavan says moha, powered by delusion. And this is at 2 levels. Delusion happens at 2 levels. At one level, holding their own egos, the human ego as supreme, and discounting the power of nature, discounting the power of universe. And at the second level, not realizing that the fulfillment of their desires, you know, this desire after desire after desire, is not going to give them inner peace in the long run. So at these 2 levels, at a universal level, thinking that I am bigger than the universe, at a personal level, believing falsely in a deluded manner that I am going to get this inner peace. But even after 70, 80, 90 years of striving in that manner, that inner peace still doesn't come. Kamopabhoga parama etavat. And since enjoying objects of desire is their only goal, and that is all that matters. Because of that, kamopabhoga parama etavat. Because of that, they take refuge in upashritaha, refuge in chintam aparimeyam, limitless worries and anxiety. The worries and anxiety that people normally have, it is there all the time. And it continues till the very end, till the death. Pralayanta. So generally, such materialists in day-to-day life, you know, we see people, very, very intelligent people. They are no fools, by the way. Very smart, very intelligent. It is just that their sattvic nature is completely dormant. Rajas dominates to an extreme. And when the mind cautions about disastrous outcomes of their rajasic tendencies, through their rough intellect, they take recourse to tamasic nature, delusion. They deny. Like, for example, right now, after 2.5 years of corona, humanity is under denial, as if everything is gone. Till what? Till the next disaster happens. That denial comes in. That is delusion. That denial is tamasic delusion. These people are classic case studies. I used to have this quote-unquote company principles. I talked about that earlier also. One of my principles was, please do not sacrifice the long-term good for short-term gain. See, oftentimes, especially salespeople, they want to meet their quarter goals, their monthly goals, their weekly goals, their daily target. In order to meet the daily target, they put the company long-term vision, what we do, what we stand for in jeopardy. So, especially addressing to the sales guys, but also, by the way, a lot of even product development people also. Today's focus on quality, they will not bother because they want to complete something. At the end of it all, once it is complete, you will find so many quality bugs, quality issues that you'll have to redo it anyway. So they compromise the long-term benefit for short-term gain, sacrificing long-term good for short-term gain. These are classic examples of this aspect. Today, I'm getting this. That is all that matters. Tomorrow is not even in the mind. Forget about welfare of the next generation. What my children will go through, grandchildren will go through, the future generations of humanity will go through, what is happening to the planet. That's not relevant. Tomorrow itself is not a need. This I'm getting today. That's all that matters. I'm gaining this today. Though the consequences of such a philosophy of life is much more apparent today, it's all around us. But such people have existed since time immemorial. Whether it be a Ravana or a Duryodhana or a Hitler or the European colonizers. If you see some of these European colonies, oh my God, the kind of atrocities that they have committed. Sorry, Petra, but that's the truth, right? Now look at, by the way, I'm sorry, Petra, she is from a place that suffered colonization, right? The atrocities committed. Now when we see, between Ukraine and Russia, what is going on. So all those kind of things have been going on since time immemorial. And human beings also have great reference points to emulate. See, God's optimism for creation after destruction is assured. God is there. He says, I will come and I will make sure that dharma is re-established. That is assured. If only humans were more considerate. If only humans were more, yagya spirit oriented. If only they considered the welfare of other beings, other human beings and other living creatures and non-living creatures also. The planet overall, nature overall. If only they did that, all elements of creation were given importance, it would be a much better place to live in this universe. And Bhagavan has taught us this when he spoke about the Yajna spirit in chapter 3, the spirit of cooperative endeavor. Now, continuing in the next 6 verses, Bhagavan describes the expression of this materialistic philosophy. He discusses those in the next 6 verses. We'll go through them one by one.
Asha pasha shater bhaddhaha.
Asha pasha shater baddhaha.
Kama krodha parayanaha.
Kama krodha parayanaha.
Ihanti kama bhogartam.
Ihante kama bhogartam.
Anyayenartha sanchayan.
Anyayenartha sanchayan.
Asha pasha shater bhaddhaha. Kama krodha parayanaha. Ihanti kama bhogartam. Anyani nartha sanchayan.
Baddhaha means bound. Shataihi. Shata means 100. Shataihi, hundreds, refers to countless. Bound by hundreds of what? Asha pasha. Asha pasha means chains of hope. The chains that bind you, that hope, chains of hope. Parayanaha, taking refuge in kama, krodha, lust and anger. Ihante, they put in effort. Sanchayan, to earn hordes of wealth. Anya yenartha, the unlawful means, unspiritual means. So hoarding wealth by unlawful and unspiritual means. Extremely greedy means. Kama bhogatam, for fulfillment of sensual goals. So the word's meaning is bound by countless chains of hope, taking refuge in lust and anger, they put in effort to earn hordes of wealth by unlawful, unspiritual means for fulfillment of sensual goals. See, the best thought that came to my mind to describe this was the driving licensing, right? Driver's license in the US, in America, the authorities that issued driver's license, especially for motorbikes. This is more valid for motorbikes. They look for something called target fixation. Target fixation is a behavior in which a person becomes so focused on a particular object that they tend to ride straight into it. Okay, so for example, if there is an obstacle on the road, you have to avoid that object. But target fixation leads the biker to veer towards that object. They ride into it. Similarly in cars also, but it is a lesser of an occurrence. For example, in bumper-to-bumper traffic, oftentimes you find that the car behind, they are supposed to stay away from the car ahead, which means they are supposed to brake or slow down. But then what do? They go and bang into that car ahead. So in bumper-to-bumper traffic also, the target fixation, what ought to be avoided, you go and hit it. That is what this is called, target fixation. Essentially, knowing fully well that the obstacle has to be avoided, but instead driving straight into it. And the chains of hope that Bhagavan talks about, Asha Pasha, magnetically pulls the humans to what? To Kama Bhogartham. To Anya Yenartha Sanchayan. So this kind of Asha Pasha, the chains of hope, pulls magnetically to make them earn and hoard wealth by unlawful means, unspiritual means, with the goal of fulfillment of sensual pleasures or sensual goals. The only solution to prevent that target fixation, for accidents not to occur, is for the driver to not, now look at the dichotomy here, do not look at the obstacle. So the advice given when trainers teach you driving is to look past the obstacle. You do not look into the obstacle. When approaching a turn, look past the bend, not look at the bend. Do not look at the curve, look ahead of the curve. And when there is an obstacle that suddenly comes or is seen, that comes into the vision, the peripheral vision, use it to look beyond the obstacle. This is the only solution for this target fixation in driving. If only such testing was conducted and license was issued on how to live life for human beings. For driving, we are doing that. But the more essential thing is for human beings, there should be a license on how to live life. See, licentious behavior is unprincipled behavior. And unprincipled behavior with the goal to fulfill sensual desires. And desires of the mind and intellect that result in sensual delight, kama bhogartham. You know, there is delight. The sense organs feel kicked. See, people instinctively know that what they are doing is wrong. What they are doing is incorrect. They know that legally what they are doing is incorrect. Spiritually what they are doing is. See, Yudhishthira, the best example in Mahabharata, right? He knew that the game that he's playing, that game of dice, was wrong, was incorrect. And I remember I told you about the what's Arjuna's charioteer? Sorry, what's Krishna's charioteer's name? Anyway, we'll come back sometime later. So you know, there is actually a Gita, a small Gita on that. That time we saw, right? So Yudhishthira actually, you know, he knows what he is doing wrong, and he hides Krishna from his mind. Krishna is his friend. Yudhishthira knows that Krishna is a super accomplished human being, and Yudhishthira also knows that Krishna is Bhagavan. But still, he pushes Bhagavan out of his mind. Exactly like we push Bhagavan out of our mind when we do commit something wrong. So instinctively, we know that we are committing a wrong action. And instinctively, we know that the action will not result in lasting peace. It will not result in happiness. And it will definitely not be good for our own progeny, for our offspring, for our future descendants. But still, human beings veer towards it. And they do it anyway. Why do they do it? Bhagavan says, Asha Pasha Satair Baddaha, bound by countless chains of hope. Kama Krodha Parayana, taking refuge in lust and anger. The next three verses describe the attitude with which such people lead life. So we talked about these kind of people and the nature and how they do and the quote-unquote Asuri tendencies. But the attitude with which they lead life, Bhagavan covers in the next three verses. We will recite all three verses together.
Idamadhyamaya labdham.
Idamadhyamaya labdham.
Imam prapsi manoratham.
Imam prapsye manoratham.
Idamastidamapi me.
Idamastidamapi me.
Bhavishyati punardhanam.
Bhavishyati punardhanam.
Asau maya hata shatruhu.
Asau maya hata shatruhu.
Hanishye cha paranapi.
Hanishye cha paranapi.
Ishvarohamaham bhogi.
Ishvarohamaham bhogi.
Siddhoham balavan sukhi.
Siddhoham balavan sukhi.
Adyo bijanavanasmi.
Adyo bhijanavanasmi.
Konyosti sadrisho maya.
Onyosti sadrisho maya.
Yakshe dasyami modishye.
Yakshe dasyami modishye.
Ityajnana vimohitaha.
Ityajnana vimohitaha.
Idamadya maya labdam. Imam prapsi manoratham. Idamastidamapi me. Bhavishyati punardhanam. Asau maya hata shatruhu. Hanishye cha paranapi. Ishvarohamaham bhogi. Siddhoham balavan sukhi. Adyo bijanavanasmi. Konyosti sadrisho maya. Yakshe dasyami modishye. Ityajnana vimohitaha.
So I'm not going to do word by word translation. It is pretty straightforward. You can also look at the notes if you want to, but it just means what is written. So the meaning is, this has been gained by me today. Any desire that is there for future, I will gain, I will obtain. Today I've got this, anything in the future I will get. This is the attitude, by the way. Bhagavan is talking about the attitude of such people with Asuri tendencies. All of this is already mine. It belongs to me. And even more wealth shall be mine in the future. Then in the next verse, I have finished this powerful enemy of mine. I shall destroy others also. I am the Lord of all enjoyments. And all enjoyments are in my control, in my grasp. I am perfect. Having accomplished everything, that's what makes me perfect. I am powerful with great capacity. So what? Naturally, I am happy. I am very happy. I am supreme in wealth. And I belong to a very powerful family. Who else is equal to me? There's nobody else. I am the supreme. No one is equal to me. And they are all deluded by their own ignorance. They need to learn from me. I am benevolent. I give. I rejoice. So this is the attitude with which these people live. See, these verses really don't need any explanation. They are self-explanatory. And we see this attitude all around us. In fact, I dare say that even I used to have some of this attitude when I was in the this corporate world, maybe at a lower level, maybe not at the level of a Putin or a Hitler, but at a much lower level. This is what it is. Kill the competition. I'm not kidding you. Kill the competition. That is how we work. And grab the market share. That is how the materialistic world works. And I dare say I also had maybe some elements of this attitude. Maybe I guess that's what kind of made me get out of there much earlier than otherwise I could have. Right? I could have continued till I was 60 or 70, whatever. But yeah, it is there. That's a part of life, right? And guess what? I was extremely lucky to be in a very sheltered environment. This quote unquote technology-based product environment, where you build products, which is where I was. That is very protected. There are other sectors where there is no such protection. Corruption reigns, you can't help it. It's there. It's there in the environment. Like I recently had to go to the registrar. How do you avoid corruption? There is no way. There is no way to avoid corruption. If you are to exist, you have to be, help corruption, if not be corrupt. Or you say, forget it, I don't want it. Those are the only two options. So, they don't really need, we have experienced it, all of us. Fundamentally, the game of desires is an endless gamble. The more one possesses, the more one wants to possess. And Bhagavan actually gives a beautiful analogy of the opposite, of the right kind of attitude. Here he's talking about the wrong kind of attitude. He gives a fantastic analogy of the right kind of attitude very early in the Bhagavad Gita, verse 70 of chapter 2. And Bhagavan had said at that time, Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. So a beautiful example. Bhagavan says, just like an ocean is filled to the brim, and yet it does not overflow. We see whenever we go to the beach, we see it is absolutely filled to the brim and rivers are flowing into it, rain is falling into it, but the ocean does not flood the land. It is up to the brim, but it remains where it is, even as more and more and more water enters it. Just like that, people who are not desirer of desire, na kama kami, those who are not a desirer of desires, they attain tranquility, they attain peace in the presence of all the samsaric aspects that are going on. As much as this ocean remains in the brim without overflow. And what is the consequence of such a wrong attitude? Bhagavan talks about that in the next verse.
Aneka chitta vibhrantaha
Aneka chitta vibhrantaha
mohajala samavritaha
mohajala samavritaha
prasakta kama bhogishu patanti narakeshu chau. Aneka chitta vibhrantaha mohajala samavritaha prasakta kama bhogishu patanti narakeshu chau.
Aneka chitta vibhrantaha, bewildered by many imaginations. Mohajala samavritaha, entangled in the net of delusion. Mohajala. Prasakta, addicted. Kama bhogeshu, to the gratification of lust. Patanti narakeshu chau, they fall into a hell despicable. Bewildered by many imaginations, entangled by a net of delusion, in the net of delusion, addicted to gratification of lust, they fall into a hell despicable. See, the mind intellect of an egocentric, indulgent, sensualist. It's completely empty of concentration, the power of concentration. It may be able to focus for short durations on what? On today's achievements. What I have to get done today, what I have to gain today. Short focus, pinpointed. But the power of concentration is not, it's not there. Because of which it exhausts itself. And it exhausts itself into hallucinations and imaginations. Aneka chitta vibhranta, bewildered by imaginations. These are all imaginations, thinking that we are doing the right for the planet. The power of judgment of such a mind intellect is also caught in a snare of delusion, the web of delusion, the chain of delusion, moha jala. And such a person gets more and more and more addicted to the gratification of lust. And Bhagavan says, patanti narakeshu cha. Because of all this, so what is the result? That's what this verse is about, is they fall into a hell that is despicable. See, a human being, what do you mean by hell that is despicable? We are not talking about some dark place where you go and there is burning oil and you're dipped into that burning oil. No, that's not hell. From Sanatana Dharma point of view, that is not the description of hell. Hell, a human being has the inherent capacity to create hell out of heaven and heaven out of hell. We can make a heaven of hell. We can make a hell of heaven. And how do we do this? By the harmony or the discord that is there within us, within our mind. If there is harmony in our mind, even hell becomes heaven. If there is discord in our mind, even heaven becomes hell. This harmony and discord. Conducive physical environment, but inner suffering in a person creates hell. Inconducive physical environment, inner harmony in a person creates hell. So the hell and the heaven are determined by the amount of harmony or the amount of discord in one's own mind intellect, in one's own internal makeup. That is what hell is or heaven is. And every mind that has fallen into this kind of a depth of hell, hellish depth, still it has that pure consciousness. See, we saw earlier, Bhagavan says, I am there everywhere. He describes in his Vibhuti, he describes the worst also as himself, right? So even in these minds that have fallen into this depth of hell, that pure consciousness exists deep within. It is just veiling. And we saw how the veiling happens, right? Veiling happens like a smoke covers the fire and a small breeze will blow it off. Veiling happens like a layer of dust is put on a mirror and you have to rub it to make the mirror clean. Or veiling happens like a baby in the womb, which requires a big process for the baby to get unveiled. So various stages of veiling. So depending on how deep the person has gone into asuric tendency, the veiling is either very soft and can go away quickly, or it is very deep and takes ages, maybe more than one birth, maybe more than multiple births also. So this self, the pure consciousness, the supreme is very much deep within every single aspect of creation. And that gives signals through conscience. This kind of signal that happens, and it combines with this need of stature in society of this person. See, even this person, by the way, politicians are the best examples for this, right? So they want the stature in society while they are doing all the nonsense that they are doing. So this conscious prick that comes, combined with the need for stature in society, it makes such people also do so-called spiritual work. In the next verse, we'll see what Bhagavan has to say about this kind of spiritual work.
Atma sambhavita stabdaha.
Atma sambhavita stabdaha.
Dhanamana madanvitaha.
Dhanamana madanvitaha.
Yajanti nama yajnaiste.
Yajanti nama yajnaiste.
Dambena viddhi purvakam.
Dambena viddhi purvakam.
आत्मसम्भाविताः स्तब्धाः धनमानमदान्विताः यजन्ति नाम यज्ञैस्ते दम्भेन विद्धिपूर्वकम्
Dhana mana madanvitaha, filled with pride. Mana is pride, and intoxication of wealth. Dhana is wealth. Stabdaha, with a closed mindset, stubborn, closed, nothing, nobody can help this person. Completely closed mindset. Atma sambhavitaha, for personal glorification. They, yajante, perform. Nama yajna. Nama yajnaihi, sacrifice for the namesake. Namesake sacrifices. Nama yajnaihi, namesake sacrifices. Dambhena, out of ostentation. Viddhi purvakam, contrary to spiritual guidance. Filled with pride and intoxication of wealth, with a closed mindset for personal glorification, they perform namesake sacrifices out of ostentation and contrary to scriptural guidance. The guidance, the dictations that you get in the scriptures, the way to do. Vedas, the Karma Kanda of the Vedas prescribe every single step of how to do rituals or yajna or whatever kind of practices that are meant to be done. But without knowing that or following or tweaking that for selfish goals, they just perform for the sake of it, for ostentatiousness. In fact, even some small little thing, when I was writing this down, I felt in the beginning, of the satsang, we do Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, chanting is there, right? There is also an element where Upasana and I, for this video that is there on YouTube, we just put to begin the satsang. The Hare Krishna, Hare Rama is chanting in the back, and I'm sitting with my so-called closed eyes ostentatiously for that video. So I used to feel is it Dambamana, right? But no, the chanting of Hare Rama, Hare Krishna in the beginning of the satsang truly helps. That it's meditative. It helps the satsang happen so well, and it helps the mind focus and concentrate, and things which are not there in the mind also come during the satsang because of that chanting. But sometimes I feel, are we doing this for YouTube? I used to feel like that in the beginning, not now. I'm talking about, we are now in what, 90th satsang or something like that, maybe 89, 90, right? I'm talking about the first 4, 5 of those. I used to feel, why am I doing this for YouTube? Right? So, but coming back, these people do that. That is what they do. We often hear about such people. They build places of worship, huge temples, huge mosques, huge churches. They build. They give the money and they make it known to everyone that I am the one who's built this temple. See, my name is there. And I contributed that pillar to that temple. My name will be there on that pillar. Dambamana. They also run religious institutions. They'll be sitting on the trust board. Oh, I am in TTD trust. I'm very powerful. I can get you inside without any trouble. Right into the sanctum sanctum, and I'll give you 15 minutes darshan. Okay, Dambamana. That is also Dambamana. Right? And organizing rituals and so on and so forth. All these are done with pomp and show. And people who are desirous of that, they'll actually go, quote unquote, sucking up to these people for the benefit and the good. And it is done for personal advertisement, and it is done for societal recognition. And Bhagavan says, Nama Yajna. Nama Yajna, this Nama Yajna is namesake sacrifice. And these namesake sacrifices are not only religious rituals, by the way, undertaking social work, community work, just to show that, hey, I do this welfare in my neighborhood. Just for that ostentatiousness, for namesake, for personal glorification, without the sense of that yajna spirit, that spirit of cooperative endeavor, not for welfare of others, for self-glorification. That is Nama Yajna. Bhagavan clearly says that such work is contrary to scriptural guidance, what is stipulated in the scriptures. And in fact, on the contrary, he says in the next verse,
Ahankaram balam darpam
Ahankaram balam darpam.
Kamam krodam cha samshritaah.
Kamam krodam cha samshritaah.
Mamatma paradehishu.
Mam atma paradeheshu.
Pradvishantobhyasuyakaah.
Pradvishantobhyasuyakaah.
Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodam cha samshritaah. Mamatma paradehishu pradvishantobhyasuyakaah.
Samshritaha, taking refuge in. What? Ahankaram, egoism. Balam, the sense of power, authority. Darpam, haughtiness. Kamam, lust. Krodam, anger. Pradvishantaha, they disregard. Mam, my presence. Atma paradeheshu, in their and in other bodies. What does this mean, in their and in other bodies? The kshetra, in all of the kshetra. Kshetra, kshetragya, the kshetra part of that. Abhya suyakaha, with malicious intent. Taking refuge in egoism, sense of power in society, haughtiness, lust and anger, they disregard my presence in them and in the rest of creation, and thus exist and work with malicious intent. Now, who does not have these qualities? When Bhagavan says, egoism, power, haughtiness, lust, anger, who doesn't have? Everyone has. I know when I'm reading all this that I have also had each one of these qualities. I still have some of them, maybe reduced extent. But who doesn't have? Everyone has. And also the qualities that Bhagavan listed out as Sattvic Sampad, not just these. There are more. If we go through, the entire. This is one chapter where Bhagavan has talked about all the negativism, by the way. Entire Bhagavad Gita is about the optimistic, the beautiful aspects of creation and, spirituality. This chapter, Bhagavan has detailed manner spelled out the bad qualities that are there in the universe. And all those qualities everyone has. It's part of nature. It's part of creation. All of them have. But the person who evolves spiritually, the evolver, that person, they put in self-effort to get rid of these qualities. On the contrary, a person with asuric tendencies takes refuge in these qualities. See the contrasting aspect of a spiritual sadhaka who puts in, has the qualities, especially when you are less qualified, you're not a siddha, not on the way, just on the way to becoming a good sadhaka. You put in effort to get rid of them. But a asuri sampad person takes refuge, samshritaha, takes refuge in such qualities. And such people have all these qualities in all abundance at any given point in time, all at once. All qualities, all the time, all at once in them. But then they will say, what's wrong with it? So what? It's only one life. No, it's okay. I'm enjoying. What's your problem? Who knows what is after all this? Just leave it. Let me be. I'm fine. Let me be. Bhagavan says that such an existence is complete disregard of his presence, his being there in all of you. So such people disregard Bhagavan's presence. Mam pradvishantaha. Mam pradvishantaha, you disregard that I am there in you. You disregard that I am there around you. Both of this you disregard. Now, if a person wants to disregard, very welcome to continue that life. Otherwise, put in that effort to get rid of those qualities. See, Sri Krishna had earlier said in this chapter, in the earlier verse, he had said that such people fall into hell despicable. Patanti narake shuchav. So that is my own mind. Okay. That is their own doing. I create that hell within me. What does Bhagavan do to these people? That we shall see in the next session. Hari Om Shri Krishna.
Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, comments, questions? So my request is, please don't get shaken up by these verses of Bhagavad Gita. These are very few verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita Bhagavan is devoting to this, right? And this is very important for us because we should know what are the things we have to avoid. And if somebody says that hell means burning in boiling oil, please disregard that. That's not hell. Hell means taking refuge in Asuri Sampad. That is hell. Okay, if there are no thoughts or comments or questions, we can close for today. Thank you. Hari Om. We'll meet next Saturday. We will complete chapter 16. Hari Om.